Well, I'm sorry about the miscue on the children's worship. That was totally me. Don't ask me what's going on. I'm just a preacher, so don't. Sorry about that. So we're in a series called God's Good Design, and we are looking at how God designed us for our good. Whether that is how to live and thrive as a man, as a woman, and in our relationships, all of our relationships. And specifically, right now we're looking at the relationship of marriage. And you look at, so we're often going back to Genesis, to the creation accounts, because that design is in how we are created. And I've noticed that when we're first introduced to Adam and Eve, they're not just created as man and woman. From the very beginning, God made them husband and wife. And so Genesis 2:18, the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." That phrase explains her role as a wife. A helper fit, or a helper suitable for him in the Hebrew, is ezer kenegdo. And we talked about this last week. And ezer is not a servant. Helper does not mean servant. She helps by bringing her strengths to his strengths. And kenegdo means literally like opposite him, or like what is in front of him. They are the same, but different, intentionally different. They're like each other, but designed by God with pronounced intentional differences. For her to help Adam, she obviously must be different from him in some ways, especially where he may be less able or he is less gifted. So today, we're going to talk about those gender differences, because God made the woman different for good reasons. But because there are differences, putting a man and a woman together for extended periods is a chemistry experiment that's bound to have a few explosions. I want to watch this video to give an example of what I'm talking about.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep...
Okay, so obviously that video was made by a man, right? That depicts how, if there's a problem, guys typically want to fix it. As a guy, that's the only response that makes sense to me. When Sherry wants to discuss it more, and when she doesn't like any of the solutions, but she wants to keep talking about how she doesn't like any of the solutions, that's just dumb to me. Why doesn't she see it like I do? But guys, that's not a bug. Maybe that's the design. Because think about how Eve was created in Genesis 2. Adam is created from the ground, but she is created from her husband. God takes a rib from Adam and forms it into a woman. And I wonder if that's why women in general are more oriented towards relationships. Because taken from the man, she is made for relationship. And she's more oriented and tuned in relationally. I mean, from the moment of her creation, she was in a relationship. She was made for relationship. So you ladies are usually much more aware of the subtleties and the nuances of relationship dynamics. You're processing on multiple channels the emotions and the possible consequences of every situation. Your broadband, we're dial-up. And so she's often much more tuned to the big picture than I am. She considers more of other people's emotions and the wider implications. She plays through all the possible future scenarios much more than I do. So she is seeing things differently. And she approaches it differently because she approaches it relationally. And it's not that she doesn't want to solve the problem, but her way is to talk through it. And there's a lot to consider for her in the big picture. She wants to talk about it with him because that makes her feel connected and it feeds her relationally. And that's very different than his approach, even when they both share the same goal of dealing with the problem. So that's just one of the differences in how we're designed. And it will always create some tension. And the answer is not to eliminate those God-given differences because we can't. But we can come to appreciate those differences and not let them derail our marriage if we lean on one assumption, one belief about each other. Now I'm going to share that key belief in just a moment. But let me give you another example of how this tension will be a constant presence in your marriage. Ladies, tell me, don't you love it when he does or says just the right thing without you saying anything? Because to you, that proves that he's tuned into you and he's invested, that he values the relationship. He's thinking about you. He's anticipating your needs. The truth is, though, he may want to meet your expectations, but you're going to have to be clear. You're going to have to actually tell him what you need. And you don't necessarily like that because that's not very romantic. And some women assume that doesn't count if you have to tell their husbands what they need. But that's really not fair. He's not designed like you. He may not be as perceptive emotionally as you. But his strength is being task-oriented and proactive. You know, sometimes Sherry needs me to be like that to help push her through her emotions to a resolution so she doesn't get paralyzed with worry. My strength can balance her strength. I was at a couples retreat a year or two ago, and we were asked to share what we appreciated about our spouse. And as I listened to the responses around the room, I noticed that several of the wives said some version of the same thing, which was, he calms me. He brings me stability. He's the steady one that grounds me. The fact that he was not emotional, that he could compartmentalize it, that he did focus on solutions was an asset that balanced her. He kept her emotional, relational strengths from becoming paralyzing, from becoming weaknesses. So let's be very careful, church, about criticizing our spouses because of how they were made by God. I better not dismiss those God-given traits with some statement like, women are ridiculous, or, men are so clueless. James warns us in James 3, with the tongue, we bless our Lord and Father, and with it, we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. Male and female, they are made in the image of God. All of those traits that are male and female reflect the image of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing, my brothers. These things ought not to be so. So our differences, when applied together, can make both of us better. He or she is different from you in ways that are intended by God for your good. That's why you don't want to eliminate those differences. But that means those differences will always be there. So the potential for disagreements and misunderstandings will also always be there. I read an article by one marriage therapist that said every married couple has 2 to 3 chronic problems that never go away. He said, you can learn to live with them more generously and don't let them hurt you as much. But this is a professional therapist saying you can have 2 or 3 problems in your marriage that you will always have. Even this professional cannot fix them. You're not going to solve them by winning arguments. You're not going to solve them by changing your spouse because you can't. There are some intractable problems that will always be between you two. It may be personality differences. There may be some of those gender differences that we've been discussing. They may be rooted in the baggage that every one of us brings into our marriage. Maybe your husband is still fighting to come out of the shadow of his older brother. Maybe your wife is dealing with body image and insecurity issues that go all the way back to middle school. Maybe one of you is plagued by a fear of commitment because of the dysfunction you saw in your parents' marriage. This therapist says a couple of those, at least, will always be sitting between you. So you have to learn how to live with it and navigate around it. How to do that? How can we do that? Well, it starts with that key assumption I mentioned earlier. And I'll tell you what it is in just a minute. See what I'm doing? I'm building up anticipation. See that? So this key belief comes from the research of a woman named Shaunti Feldhahn, who wrote a book. You see it on the screen there. This is a book based upon research that she did with hundreds of couples. And so what she did was she asked every couple how happy they were. And then she dug deeper into the feedback from the couples who said they were highly happy to see what the commonalities was among just that subset. And what she found is this basic assumption, this foundational belief shared by those highly happy couples. So when Shaunti asked the question, do you care about your spouse and want the best for them, even during painful times, almost 100% of the couples said yes. Even in struggling relationships, 97% said they cared about their mates. When she asked the wives, when she asked the husbands, do you care about her? Do you care about him? Almost every one of them, even in the unhappy marriages, said, yes, I care about him. But here was the difference. Among those struggling, unhappy marriages, more than 4 in 10, almost half of them did not believe their spouse cared about them. So even though they said, yeah, I care about him, half of the unhappy wives did not believe that he cared about her, and vice versa. So that internal assumption for those spouses, maybe it sounded something like, he knew how that would make me feel, and he did it anyway. So obviously he doesn't care about me. Shaunti says this about those numbers. For the vast majority of couples, if those numbers are accurate, there's only one possible conclusion. Nearly every wife or husband who thinks my spouse doesn't care is flat wrong. Even among those unhappy ones who said he doesn't care about me, when she asked that husband, he said, yeah, I do care about her. So almost across the board, every spouse who thinks that their spouse doesn't care about them is flat wrong. But until we change that baseline assumption, until we stop defaulting the worst explanation, it's very difficult to get things better. Let me give you an example of how this can play out. I've got a big box of marriage mistakes from my own life. I'm going to pull one of those out and share them with you now. I was laid off from my job within a month of when our first baby was born. And so that was one of the worst times of our marriage because Sherry would go off to work every day and support us. And I was looking for a job, but I also had a lot of free time at home all of a sudden. And so I decided, my personality being what it is, this was an opportunity to get things organized in this house. Well, when I walked into the nursery, I discovered there was a stack of baby clothes with the price tags still on them. And I couldn't believe Sherry could be so lazy and disorganized that she wouldn't even bother to take the tags off and put those clothes in the closet. So I cut the tags off and I put those baby clothes away. Well, a few days later, Sherry discovered what I had done. It turns out those baby clothes were shower gifts. And she was planning to return them because they did not fit Darby. But now she could not do that because I had cut the tags off. So basically, I had just thrown away a pile of money when we were really struggling financially because I assumed the worst about her. She's lazy and disorganized. And now she could easily assume the worst about me. He's an idiot. And if you keep assuming the worst, it's a terrible downward spiral. We have to realize that since we're all imperfect beings, we will hurt each other and be hurt by each other. Sometimes it's going to be inadvertent, and sometimes it'll even be on purpose. my motive for cutting those tags and putting away those clothes was to be organized and helpful. It wasn't to criticize Sherry. But if I had assumed the best about her, I would have asked. I would have assumed she had a good reason for those tags still being on those clothes. And I would have asked. And this whole misunderstanding would have never happened in the first place. So, finally, here's that key belief that will help you navigate your God-given differences. Assume the best about your spouse. By expecting the best, you bring out the best. I mean, after all, why are you together? There's so many times I'm sitting there in and hearing a couple argue or they're complaining to me about their spouse. When I ask, why are you together? Why'd you ever get together? And I imagine it's because you chose each other, right? You weren't forced to. You chose to live with each other, not to be miserable, but to be happy. That was the original intention. I mean, you at least saw the possibility of happiness. I can't imagine anyone getting married with the goal of being miserable and misunderstood and constantly fighting. 88% of couples say the most important reason they married their spouse was because they love them. That ranked higher than any other reason, like companionship or having children or financial stability. So you're not delusional to think that you married a well-intentioned person who truly does care about you. Shanti Felton summed up that core finding of her research this way. She said, highly happy spouses choose to believe their mate cares for them, no matter what they're seeing from their spouse or feeling at the time, and then they act accordingly. This is going to take some work and some major changes for some of us. It can be hard to overcome years of disappointments and hurts. But it takes just one. It takes just one partner to start choosing to believe the best about the other. That's the essential first step that will create room for other improvements in your marriage. And yes, if you trust them and assume the best about them, you'll still get hurt sometimes. He or she will still fail you sometimes. You may have to go a long way until you find happiness in your marriage and trust in your spouse. But here's what I know. I know nothing will change. Nothing will change until someone does the unexpected and chooses to respond with undeserved, unconditional love. Christians, look at that sentence. That sums up Christianity, doesn't it? That's what every one of us received from Christ. The whole story of salvation is of a loving God who does the unexpected for people who don't deserve it. The Old Testament, God chooses the nation of Israel through which to show his love to all the world. They are his chosen people. And he even uses marriage language to describe his relationship with Israel. He didn't choose to love Israel because they deserved it, because they were the best people on earth. Far from it. They constantly disappointed. I want you to listen to what Moses said to those people just before they entered the promised land. This is what he said, Deuteronomy 9. Understand then, it's not because of your righteousness, Israel, that the Lord your God is giving you this good land to possess, for you are a stiff-necked people. You are stubborn. You never seem to learn. You keep making the same mistakes. You keep turning your back on God. He says, remember this and never forget how you aroused the anger of the Lord your God in the wilderness. From the day you left Egypt until you arrived here, you have been rebellious against the Lord. But God kept his promises. And God kept loving them. And then in the New Testament, Jesus again uses marriage language to describe his relationship with us, the church, the bride of Christ. And just like the Israelites, we will fail him so many times. I've never heard anyone criticize Jesus, but I've heard plenty of people who were disappointed by his bride. But he keeps patiently loving us, doesn't he? Jesus didn't choose to love us because we deserved it. Paul says in Romans 5, God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While we were still sinners, while we were still unlovely, while we were still even acting like enemies of Christ, Paul says, he didn't love us or die for us when we were good. It's while we were still sinners, undeserving. But he saw the potential. in us to be good. He saw that desire to be good and repent of what we were, so he did the unexpected and died for us with undeserved, unconditional love. And he gives us grace, and he gives us new mercy every morning, new chances to grow and be better. In our marriages, we're confronted with the same choice. Will we love each other in the same way that Christ loves us? Will we believe in the potential of what Christ can do in the heart of our husband or wife? Honey, I know you'll figure this out. I believe in you. You'll do what's best for us. Imagine if those were the first words out of your mouth before any criticism, before bringing up past disappointments, before pointing out all the reasons that this won't work or this will go wrong. Imagine the difference that would make. And it's risky, I know. You may have a hard time assuming the best about your spouse because of that selfish thing, that betrayal, that disappointment. So let's try this instead. Let's try this first. Imagine the difference it would make if you lived with someone who assumed the best about you. Imagine that for a second. Just rest in that for a second. I mean, it would call you to be better, right? You would want to do what's right. You would not want to let them down. You'd want to make that extra effort. Living with someone like that not only lifts you up, it gives you confidence. It gives you peace. It gives you peace even when you're not at your best, because you know they'll still see you. They'll still assume the best about you. That's how he sees you. That's how she sees you. Through eyes that see the best about you, who see and believe in the potential of you and what you can be. I don't know about you, but that's how I want to be seen. So, church, go home and give that gift to your spouse. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It's not proud. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Now go home and love him, love her like that. That's our lesson. Let's stand and sing.